Hello viewer, welcome to Elimu TV. My name is Sally. Today we're going to talk about verbs. Remember, this is a Form 1 Lesson 7 English. We have aired the rest of the 6 lessons. So before we start our lesson today, I'd kindly request you to write to us, drop your comments, your questions, or even your concerns on our SMS number, which is 22518. Our Facebook page is Elimu TV and our Twitter handle is at Elimu_KE. So before we start our lesson today, I'd kindly request you to follow us, drop your concerns or anything you want to tell us. Remember, we also have a school where you can join and learn. You only need to text us on that number. So our lesson is, by the end of this lesson, it is expected that you shall be able to define irregular verbs. You'll be able to give examples of irregular verbs. You should also be able to supply appropriate present and past tenses and participles to irregular verbs. And the last object, you should be able to construct appropriate sentences using irregular verbs. So if we may start by introducing our lesson. Previously we have looked at verbs. We said that verbs are words that denote an action or show the state of being. And whenever we talk about verbs in English, we can inflect verbs in the normal pattern where we use the ed to show the past tense. But in some cases we don't follow that pattern, and that is what we are going to look at today. So the English language verbs have different forms or tenses. There is the present tense, the simple past tense, and the past participle, to name a few. Most regular verbs have the simple past and the past participle spelled like the present tense, except the past tenses have a d or the ed added to the regular form. Before we move on, let's take a moment to review the 3 basic tenses in the English language, as these may help us with our understanding of irregular verbs. We are saying that in English verbs we have the regularity or the irregularity of these verbs is determined by whether we add or the ed to form the past tense, or the verb changes the whole cause to provide us with the right form of the past tense. Let us start with the present tense. The present tense of a verb, or what is also referred to as the root form of the verb, is the verb in form. It has not been inflected. We have the example, fly the kite. Fly is the verb in that sentence, and it is existing in its root form. Example number 2, I feel great right now. In that sentence, the verb is feel. It has not been inflected. It is existing in its root form. That is what we refer to as the present tense of the English verbs. Next, we have the past tense. And whenever we talk about the past tense, then we are talking about something that occurred in the past time. It could be 10 seconds ago. It could be 1 hour ago. It could be a day ago. It could be a week ago. It could be an year ago. It could be even a decade ago. So past tense, the word past should always remind you of whenever we talk about past tense, then you're talking about something that happened in the past. The past tense is used to represent past events. Example 1, we have I flew the kite. Flew is a verb in that sentence. It is not existing in its root form. It is written to present and the past tense of the verb fly is flew. Next we have I felt great yesterday too. Felt is a verb in that sentence, and again it is written in its past tense. otherwise the present tense of the verb. Next, we have the past perfect. And in an example, I have flown the kite very well until the wind died down. Number 2, I had felt great until recently. So those are examples of verbs existing in their past perfect. We have examples of regular verbs. We are talking about irregular verbs and regular verbs. And previously we have said that regular verbs, they follow a pattern of inflection where we probably add the ed or the d to form the past tense. Example number 1, I will call her in the evening. The verb in the sentence is we have the both auxiliary verb will and the main verb or the major verb in that sentence, which is call. So when we want to form the past tense of the verb call, we add ed to form I called her in the morning. What about if we want to talk about the habitual act of calling? This is continuous. She calls her in the morning. So it is habitual, it is a routine for her to call her in the morning. Next, we have he will look at himself on the mirror. The past tense is looked. Note that it is only the word look that has been added, ed, to form the past tense. And it has been added as to form the future perfect. He looks at him in the mirror. Next, we have the irregular verbs. And we are saying that irregular verbs are common verbs in the English language that do not follow the simple system of adding to the end of the word to form the past tense. This means the spellings can be a little tricky. Some verbs follow patterns such as adding a or replacing I with a. Examples: drink, drank, spring, sprang, know, knew, blow, blew, and others. It is so good to realize that the predictability of such irregular verbs is not there. Unfortunately, learning irregular verbs means memorization. You have to remember the kind of past tenses that irregular verbs take. The past participle is used with the helping verb. So whenever we want to form the past participle of irregular verbs, then we use the auxiliary verb have. Example number 1, for the present perfect, I have flown the kite. In the recent past, I have felt great today. The auxiliary verb help in the recent past. Next, we have the future perfect. I will have flown the kite 5 miles by the end of the day. Next, I will have felt great 3 days in a row after tomorrow. And then we have examples of irregular verbs. We have said that whenever we are talking about the irregular verbs, these are English verbs that do not take the normal ed or d to form their past tenses. So I'd request you maybe to pick a piece of paper and note the following. We have a bunch of irregular verbs. The first one is awake, awoke, and awoken. Beat does not change. Bite then becomes beat and beaten. We have below, we have blew then blown. Bring, brought, and brought. Burn, In this case, we can have burned or burnt. Next, we have buy, and the past tense is bought, and the past participle is bought. Come, past tense is came, past participle is come. Past tense of be is was, and past participle been. Begin, past tense began, and past participle began. Note that most past and past participle you. Next we have bleed, past tense bled, past participle bled. Verb break, past tense broke, and past participle broken. Build, past tense built, and past participle built. Burst does not change. So we have the past tense of the verb burst is burst, and the past participle is. The past tense is caught, and the past verbs. So that's quite a bunch of irregular verbs. I hope that you have noted the kind forms, the various forms that they take whenever they form their past tense and their past participle. So having looked at all those words and having talked about regular and irregular verbs in English, I will leave you with some assignment. And our assignment for today is that construct 10 sentences to show the tense of the irregular verbs lesson. Construct 10 sentences to show the tenses of the irregular verbs studied in this lesson. So the verbs that were presented by the last about 5 slides, I hope you've noted some. So kindly use those verbs to construct appropriate English sentences. You can always drop your comments on our short message service number, which is 22518, or you could talk to us through our Facebook page, which is Elimu TV, or even follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is at Elimu_Keki. Now, I have been your teacher, Sally. It's always a pleasure. Keep it Elimu TV, where you watch and learn.